What is up, Scream Team? Zach Cherry here, and with the brand new Hellraiser movie releasing on Hulu, I figured I would catch you all up on the last 10 movies of the franchise, just so you don't have to do it yourself. So, without any further ado, here's the entire Hellraiser franchise in 20 minutes. When it comes to its origins, there is no true beginning to the Hellraiser story, as the realm of Hell and the dark god Leviathan have an unfathomably primeval existence beyond our comprehension of time. However, the timeline's earliest entry point can be traced back to 1784 France with the creation of the Lament configuration, a seemingly normal-looking puzzle box which would unknowingly become the catalyst for the events of all 11 films. Chronologically introduced to us in the fourth film, Hellraiser Bloodline, the box was created by French toymaker Philippe LeMarchand on commission by the libertine aristocrat Duke de Lille. Obsessed with dark magic, de Lille's specifications for the box's design would transform the configuration into a portal to hell, where upon opening the box, the puzzle's solver will be rewarded with the greatest pleasures and pain known to humankind. After murdering and flaying a peasant woman with the help of his assistant Jacques, de Lille uses the Lament configuration to summon the Demon Princess Angelique. Taking form in the woman's skin, Angelique becomes enslaved to de Lille and Jacques, so long as neither one of them stands in Hell's way. However, Jacques betrays and murders de Lille, keeping Angelique as a servant all to himself. Having witnessed the entire ritual, LeMarchand invents a design for a second puzzle box called the Elysium configuration, which will have a reverse effect, allowing the puzzle solver to destroy the demons instead. However, he returns to the scene of the ritual to take back the Lament configuration, where he is caught by Jacques and Angelique. Jacques informs the toymaker that he and his bloodline are cursed until the end of time for his role in creating the box, and even though Jacques orders Angelique to kill LeMarchand, he's ultimately survived by his wife and their unborn child, whose lineage would go on to span the rest of the franchise's timeline. The ownership of the box would then be passed around for nearly a century and a half, until, as depicted in the prologue of Hellbound Hellraiser 2, it ended up in the possession of Elliot Spencer, a British captain who, after serving in the Great War, suffered severe effects of PTSD, which led to him becoming disillusioned and indulgent of a hedonistic lifestyle. Upon opening the Lament configuration, Spencer is transported to Hell, where he's transformed into a Cenobite, a once human extra-dimensional being who is imbued with the supernatural powers of Leviathan. Like all Cenobites, Spencer is mutilated beyond recognition, where he has knives slashed the skin on his head and long nails hammered into his skull along the axis points of his cuts. In his now demonic form, he becomes known as the Hell Priest, or colloquially as Pinhead, the master of a Cenobite faction known as the Order of the Gash. The timeline will then fast forward to some point in the mid-1980s, where the story begins proper with the events depicted in the first Hellraiser movie, when Frank Cotton purchases the Lament configuration from a foreign merchant during his travels through Morocco. Bringing the box back to his family's abandoned home in London, he ritualistically opens it in the house's attic, where he is torn apart by projectile hooks that shoot out at him from inside. The Cenobites, led by Pinhead, take Frank's dismembered body back to Hell with them, leaving behind no trace of the box, the murder, or anyone having been in the attic at all. The house remains undisturbed for several years until Frank's brother Larry moves in with his wife Julia in 1987. During the move-in, Larry cuts his hand on a protruding nail and spills blood on the attic's floorboards, inadvertently resurrecting Frank as an undead and skinless monstrosity. Julia, who had previously had an affair with Frank years earlier, discovers him dwelling in the attic and agrees to help him become whole again by luring men back to the house for him to feed upon. Frank slowly begins to regain his flesh, however, their sinister plan gets a wrench thrown into it when they're caught in the act by Larry's daughter Kirsty. Escaping the house with the Lament configuration, Kirsty collapses in the streets and later wakes up locked in a hospital psych ward. With only the box in her possession, she unwittingly uses it to summon the Cenobites, where they declare their intention of bringing her back to Hell with them for an eternity of suffering. Realizing that her uncle Frank was able to break out of their realm, something the Cenobites had not yet realized, she strikes a deal with them in order to trade his soul for hers if she's able to lead them back to Frank and draw a confession out of him. They agree to the deal, and Kirsty's able to sneak out of the hospital to return to her father's house. However, Frank and Julia have already murdered Larry, with Frank assuming his brother's identity by wearing his skin. They try to trick Kirsty by leading her to believe that Larry's flayed corpse is actually Frank, but when the Cenobites show up to take the body, they see through the ruse and instead demand to have the man man responsible for the murder. Believing she's protecting her father, Kirsty tries to get Frank to run away from the house with her, only to realize that it's not really him when he and Julia hold her against her will. With Frank no longer having any use for Julia, he cold-heartedly stabs her and leaves her to die before chasing Kirsty up to the attic to kill her too. But after revealing his true identity as Frank Cotton out loud, the Cenobites return once again to violently tear him apart. However, they renege on their deal with Kirsty, and after trying to take her soul as well, she's able to use the Lament configuration to send them back to their realm. Kirsty and her boyfriend Steve then attempt to burn the box in order to destroy it forever, but it's taken by a derelict, revealed to be the puzzle's guardian, before transforming into a skeletal dragon and flying off. In the first sequel, Hellbound Hellraiser 2, the story picks up almost immediately after the events of the first movie, with police investigating the Cotton family house, where they find all of the bodies of Frank and Julia's victims, as well as the blood-soaked mattress where Julia had died before being taken to hell by the Cenobites. With nobody believing her story, Kirsty is placed inside the Channard Institute, a psychiatric hospital where she urges its co-founder and head neurologist Dr. Philippe Channard to destroy the mattress to prevent Julia from ever coming back. Dr. Channard, who himself is mentally deranged and a collector of other occult puzzle boxes, secretly steals the mattress and has it brought to his home where he sacrifices one of his patients in order to resurrect Julia. Similar to Frank, Julia comes back as an undead, skinless monstrosity and has Channard bring her multiple female victims in order to restore her body. Meanwhile, Kirsty receives a bloody message from Hell asking for her help. Believing it to be her father, she escapes the Institute with the help of Channard's assistant Kyle, who now believes her story after witnessing Julia's resurrection. Upon going to Channard's house, a now fully restored Julia murders Kyle and knocks out Kirsty, only for Channard to return with a mute patient named Tiffany, who has a natural talent for solving puzzle boxes. He has Tiffany open the Lament configuration, which she has now somehow gotten a hold of, and she's able to use it to summon the Cenobites. Realizing that it was not her desire that made her open the box, Pinhead spares Tiffany, but after confronting Kirsty once again, he uses his power to transform the box into a lozenge to prevent her from using it against him. This temporarily leaves the gateway open, allowing Julia and Channard to enter the Labyrinth of Hell, which is run by the dark god Leviathan, who dwells in the shape of a gigantic version of the Lament configuration. Julia betrays Channard by turning him into a Cenobite, where she reveals it's her mission in Hell to bring back souls for Leviathan. Meanwhile, both Kirsty and Tiffany go into the labyrinth as well, so Kirsty can find her father, but she eventually discovers that it was her uncle Frank tricking her once again to try and escape the Cenobites. It becomes a family reunion when Julia shows up, but she rips Frank's heart out of his chest as an act of revenge, which momentarily allows Kirsty and Tiffany to get away. Julia goes after them to take their souls to Leviathan, but her body is sucked out of its skin and sent back into Hell. After making their way back to the hospital, they're confronted by the Channard Cenobite, who slaughters a bunch of his patients before giving chase. Kirsty encounters Pinhead and the other Cenobites, where she reveals to them that they were all once human, showing Pinhead a photograph of Elliot Spencer that she had earlier taken from Channard's collection. However, Channard catches up to them and announces to the Cenobites that he's taking over their operation, before reverting each one of them back into their human forms and killing them. Kirsty and Tiffany once again run into the labyrinth, where they're able to revert the Lament configuration back into its original box-shaped form. This causes Leviathan to change forms as well, whose power ends up decapitating Channard, allowing for Kirsty and Tiffany to escape and close the portal once and for all. Sometime later, two movers are packing up Channard's belongings, where they come across the bloodied mattress. It kills one of them, causing a giant pillar to rise up and spin around, showing that it has encased several souls, along with Pinhead, the Lament configuration, as well as the box's guardian. The Pillar of Souls is then passed off as a grotesque piece of art, and shipped off to the United States, where it remains displayed in a New York City gallery for several years, until 1992, where in the events of Hellraiser 3, a club owner named J.P. Monroe purchases the pillar from an art dealer who was revealed to be the Guardian. After an associate of JP's pries the Lament configuration out of the pillar, it opens up and pierces him with several hooked chains, sending him to a hospital emergency room where he suffers a mysterious supernatural death. Witnessed by news reporter Joey Summerskill, she investigates the phenomenon, which leads to JP's ex-girlfriend Terry, who ends up giving her the box. Meanwhile, it's revealed that Pinhead's previous reversion to his his human form caused the negative attributes of himself to manifest into an independent entity, which is what is now trapped within the pillar. He comes to life to JP and enlists his help in bringing him humans to feed on in order to rebuild his physical form and escape the pillar. Once free, he engages in an indiscriminate killing spree on Earth, transforming some of his victims into a Cenobite army and turning the rest into a slaughterhouse scene, starting with JP's nightclub, the Boiler Room. He also goes after Joey in order to destroy the puzzle box and prevent himself from ever having to return to Hell again. However, having been contacted by the other formerly human half of Pinhead's spirit, Joey manages to convert the box into the lozenge shape previously shown in Hellbound and uses it to stab Pinhead, causing him to be pulled back into Hell along with his human side. In order to prevent the Lament configuration from ever being opened again, Joey buries the box into a pit of cement on a large downtown construction site. 4 years later, upon the building's completion, the designs are revealed to resemble the same markings seen on the Lament configuration. Coinciding with the present-day timeline of Hellraiser Bloodline, this draws Angelique's attention, who recognizes the building's architect, John Merchant, to be the descendant of toymaker Philippe LeMarchand. Concerned that his bloodline might pose a direct threat to Hell, she requests from a still-living Jacques that she be allowed to go to America to take care of the matter. However, he refuses, breaking the one and only rule of not standing in Hell's way, so she kills him instead, releasing herself from her mystical enslavement. Angelique travels to New York to meet with Merchant under false pretenses, where he reveals to her his next architectural project, which is based on his ancestors' design of the Elysium configuration, a complex machine that uses lasers and mirrors to create perpetual light. Angelique explores the building where she locates the puzzle box behind a cement pillar and uses it to summon Pinhead, where she allies herself with him in order to force Merchant to create an unsealable portal to Hell. However, the architect refuses to go along with their plan, so they kidnap and threaten his son until he acquiesces. Failing to get the machine to work properly, however, Pinhead kills Merchant, but not before he's able to save his son, where his wife Bobby is then able to use the Lament configuration against Pinhead, sending both him and Angelique back to Hell. The puzzle box then resurfaces in the year 2000, which chronicles the events of Hellraiser Inferno, where it's discovered by a corrupt homicide detective, Joseph Thorne, who finds it among the items of a sadistic and ritualistic murder scene. After taking the Lament configuration with him, he proceeds to cheat on his wife with a sex worker named Daphne before making the horrible mistake of opening the box. The next day, Joseph leaves Daphne in the motel room and goes to work. While he's at the police station, he receives a call from her as she's being assaulted by an unknown attacker, and when Joseph and his partner Tony find her mutilated body, it sends them down a dark path to find a serial killer known as the Engineer. Eventually, his family, Tony, and everyone else close to him has been murdered, and Joseph comes to the even more horrific realization that he will be forever imprisoned within Hell for opening the box. As part of his torture from Pinhead, the detective is forced to live through the murders again and again on repeat until the very end of time. Hellraiser Hellseeker picks up in the year 2002, where Kirsty Cotton has moved on from the traumatic events of the first two films. She's been married to Trevor Gooden for 5 years when the couple are in an accident that plunges their car into a river. Trevor is left unable to remember much of his life before the harrowing experience, aside from the fact that Kirsty was with him and was killed in the accident. Gradually, through interactions with his previous acquaintances, Trevor not only remembers the affairs he had with 3 different women, but also that he had conspired with a coworker to murder Kirsty in order to inherit both Larry and Frank Cotton's wealth. Trevor then remembers that he had purchased the Lament configuration from the Guardian and attempted to get rid of Kirsty by giving her the box as a gift in the hope that Pinhead would finally drag her into Hell. However, Kirsty cleverly saved her own soul by once again negotiating a deal with Pinhead, exchanging her soul for that of 5 others, which included her evil husband, his accomplice, and the 3 adulterous women. Like Detective Joseph Thorne before him, Trevor had no idea he was already in Hell, when in reality he was killed by Kirsty, who shot him before the car accident and walked away unscathed. Not long after these events, another descendant of the toymaker's bloodline named Winter LeMarchand creates a death cult as seen in the 7th film Hellraiser Deader. After watching a video of their morbid practices, reporter Amy Klein travels to Bucharest to investigate the group and immediately finds the body of one of the followers, known as the Deaders, along with the Lament configuration. Like many before for her, she makes the grave mistake of meddling with the curious device, ultimately sealing her fate. Her investigation leads her directly to Winter, who tries to recruit her as a debtor, but she refuses to join them and instead hurls the Lament configuration away from the cult. This opens the portal to Hell, where Pinhead then emerges to punish Winter for his audacious belief that he could use the cult to control the puzzle box. Amy sacrifices herself before they can reap her soul as well, causing the building to explode, where it's then revealed on the news that the Lament configuration was the only piece of evidence left intact. In a more meta turn of events, the widespread media attention covering the cult creates a Cenobite fandom which goes mainstream with the release of a video game called Hellworld. With its prologue set in the year 2003, the 8th film introduces us to a group of obsessed fans as they attend their friend Adam's funeral following his sudden and mysterious death, which has been ruled to be a suicide. 2 years later, Adam's father, livid over his son's death, blames the other members of the gaming group and devises a plan to get revenge on each one of them. Using the Hellworld game to trick them, the vengeful father manipulates the group into attending a private party held in a mansion. Once he has ensnared them within his trap, the host drugs the friends and buries them alive, forcing them to hallucinate their own violent deaths as the extreme stress causes their bodies to fail. From beyond the grave, Adam manages to alert the authorities and save 2 of his friends, Chelsea and Jake. Meanwhile, his father has made a quick getaway, where he then discovers the Lament configuration among his son's belongings, revealing that it was Adam's obsession which led to him obtaining it and opening the box to be the true cause of his death. His father opens the box himself, where he is then visited by Pinhead and the other Cenobites, who mock him for his disbelief before slicing his body into pieces. The Lament configuration then resurfaces 5 years later, when in Hellraiser Revelations, friends Nico Bradley and Stephen Craven discover it while on a road trip to Mexico. After going missing, the police present their families with the possessions they were able to recover, including a video recorder which depicts disturbing images of the 2 friends opening the box. The following year, Stephen's sister Emma finds the puzzle box in her brother's belongings, where he then suddenly and inexplicably returns home. Shortly after, the families are horrified to discover what they thought was Stephen has in fact been Nico wearing his dead friend's skin. After shooting Stephen's father with a shotgun, he holds the rest of them hostage with the goal of trading Emma's soul to Pinhead in exchange for his own. However, when the Cenobite Lord arrives, there is no bartering with him, and everyone is ultimately killed or dragged to hell, with the exception of Emma. In the events of Hellraiser Judgment, which takes place 7 years later, it's become a major problem for the Cenobite faction and the Stygian Inquisition of Hell that modern technology has given so many people the ability to satiate their dark desires through the internet. This precipitates Pinhead and the Stygian Auditor to work together in order to figure out how to best reap souls in the 21st century. Meanwhile, 3 detectives, brothers Sean and David Carter and Christine Edgerton, are on the trail of a serial killer called the Perceptor, who kills those who break the 10 Commandments. During the investigation, Sean is taken captive by the Inquisition, but the angel Jophiel forces the demons to let him go. It's later revealed that Sean is the Perceptor, and heaven has intervened on his behalf so that he may continue to terrify sinners. Furious over Jophiel's interference in his affairs, Pinhead not only makes sure Sean dies, but he also slays the angel as well. For these transgressions, God punishes the Cenobite master by turning him back into a mortal man with no power. However, these effects appear to have been reversed in the not-so-distant future, as Pinhead shows up in his Cenobite form once again in the wraparound of Hellraiser Bloodline. Beginning in the year 2127, Dr. Paul Merchant, a direct descendant of the LeMarchand lineage, takes control of the Minnow space station that he created in order to move it out of orbit. The engineer then uses a robot to open the Lament configuration, summoning from hell both Pinhead and Angelique, with the latter having now become a Cenobite herself. Before Merchant is able to take further steps in his master plan, however, security forces arrive on the Minnows to detain him and investigate what's happened on the station. The Cenobites then begin to slaughter the officers, who are caught completely unaware of the extreme danger they're in. One of the officers, named Rimmer, releases Merchant just in time so that he's able to distract Pinhead with a hologram while the duo escape on a shuttle. Merchant then reveals his ultimate trap, in which the space station Minnows is in fact just a disguise for the Colossal Elysium configuration. Once he sets the massive machine in motion, the Lament configuration is destroyed along with Pinhead, Angelique, and the other Cenobites, and the gateway to hell is finally severed for good. Or at least until until Hellraiser 2022. I want to thank a few of my Patreon supporters like Sam Levy, Khalil Young, Phoebe, Shantae Moore, and Ali Hamouche. If you want to see even more horror movie content from me this Halloween season, you can check out either one of these playlists right over here. Until next time, I've been Zach Cherry, and I'll be right back.